I've blown off the show for the last 3 weeks. I'm sorry, it's my fault. Welcome back to Law Enforcement Today. I've been traveling the country and I'm just happy to be back home with Lieutenant Ryan Shea. Tell them all who you are.
Lieutenant Ryan Shea. I've been in law enforcement for 13 years, and I think I've probably said that about 4 times on this show, but I think it's important to know that I bring the law enforcement side, Kyle brings the civilian side, and we have some incredible guests. Drew, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Drew Stokes. I work for Air Marine Operations, and my title is Aviation Enforcement Agent.
So if you've never seen this show before, the entire purpose of it is to bridge the gap between civilian and civil servant. There are so many untold stories that happen all across the country on a daily basis, and the mainstream media, on the rare occasion that they do cover it, it's typically not a very pro-law enforcement story, and in many cases it's shaved down to about 45 seconds long. So I want to touch base with you guys. I had a couple of incredible experiences the last couple of weeks. So I was in Tucson, Arizona. We did a private tour of the border and got to see sort of what's really happening there. Gave a speaking engagement about law enforcement and the challenges that you guys face these days. And then I had the privilege of going up in the air with Tucson PD. And I got to tell you, there's so much happening in this country that people just don't know about. Again, sort of the whole purpose of this show. And so we just encourage you guys to continue to send us your stories, your guests. But let's just dive into the heart of it. You, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me up.
Long trip up, huh?
Oh, yeah, brutal. It was almost 2 hours of flying.
Oh, my God. And I'm sure that given the challenges that you faced, flying is no longer as easy as it once was.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I can't. It's hard for me. I'm not a small man, and getting in and out of the seats with my injuries, it can sometimes be a little bit difficult, but it's come up on 2 years now being injured, and it's going well. I'm adapting and overcoming.
All right, brother, share with us your story.
So on September 26, 2017, almost 2 years, I was walking out of a Publix grocery store in Jacksonville, Florida, just getting some groceries. I was going to Puerto Rico the next day. We were flying down to bring people home, and I was getting supplies for the flight. And I come walking out, and I'm just walking through the parking lot. I'm at about the handicap spaces. You know, most stores are the same. They're right at the front. And I hear someone scream, "I fucking hate cops," as loud as they can. I dropped my groceries. I had a shoulder holster on at the time. I put my hand on my gun to draw it, and as soon as I touched the gun, the first shot hit me underneath my right armpit, and then he shot me 4 more times. So I took a total of 5 shots in about maybe a second and a half with a Glock 19 9mm hollow points.
Walk me through what happened then.
So, he yells at me. I fall to the ground. The impact was a massive impact. He was so close. He shot me from a moving vehicle as well. So he was left-handed. He had the gun in his left hand. I saw the last 2 or 3 rounds come out. So as I get my hand on my gun, I start, because of the way we train is we turn towards our target, right? So I was turning towards my target, and so the first shot hits me underneath the armpit. The second one actually hits me in my buttocks, and if you were to see the wound, you can tell if you ever shot a turning target, it looks like it slices through. That's exactly what it looks like. That bullet went all the way through my body internally and stopped in my left pelvis, and it went through my rectum internally. And then the third shot hit me in the top of my right leg, went into my pelvis and stopped. The 4th shot went through my left leg, and then the 5th shot went through my arm right here.
You're still carrying around some of these, huh?
Yeah, I have 3 of the 5 are still in me. So I have one of the rounds is next to my thoracic spine, the T12 vertebrae, I believe it is, and I have both the ones in my pelvis are still there.
So you weren't wearing body armor at that time?
No, I did not have body armor on. It was an administrative function I was doing. I just didn't have it on, and it's unfortunate, but you never know how it would happen. If one of the bullets may have clipped my body armor and the bullet tumbled, it could have went through my lungs, my heart, all kinds of stuff. So because I put my body armor on later to see what had happened, and actually it was so far up, it was up where my body armor didn't cover it anyway. So I still, don't get me wrong, I don't want guys to see this and say, oh, well, he wasn't wearing his body armor, and that's not right. No, we should always wear our body armor. Like I said, this was an administrative function. I wasn't out doing a law enforcement mission. but it's just one of those things. I got complacent and I paid the price for it.
So you go down. What happens next?
So once I'm down on the ground, I finish my draw. When I do, the asphalt ripped the back of my hand off. So you can see this. I pulled it out. I pulled the gun so hard that actually pulled all the sensory nerves off the back of my hand. It's fine now. They all grew back together. I started scanning for targets. So I wasn't out of the fight. I knew I was shot. I knew I was hurt, and I was bleeding. I could see the blood, but I wasn't. I knew that there was a bad guy out there, and I was going to kill him. And I thought for sure that the guy would circle around and come back and get me. So I looked there was a white F-150 in front of me. I was looking underneath it, and I see feet. I was like, all right. So I'd already made the decision to kill whoever it was. So I had my gun out, I had all the slack pulled out of the trigger, and I rotated my body around. And in actuality, I probably didn't get all the way around the back of the truck, but in the moment, I thought I did. So the guy that rounded the back of the truck, he come around, and I immediately recognized it wasn't the shooter, because the shooter was a skinny white kid, and this guy, he didn't meet that description. So whenever he come around the back of the truck, he said he's gone, he's dead. And so I immediately went to firearms instructor mode. I had fully loaded weapon. I had all the slack pulled out of the trigger. I had a civilian in front of me. I had nobody. I didn't have a target. And if I did pull the trigger, where the hell was the bullet going to go? Because I was in an open field. So I decided not to pull the trigger, and it was the right call. Mm-hmm. It was automatic. The training was automatic. I didn't even have to think about it. So he leans down beside me. I told him, I said, just call 911. Officer down. Oakleaf Town Center, Publix. And then somebody else came. I said, I need you to call my office and ask for the command duty officer. I gave him the name, I gave him the phone number, and they made the phone calls. So I started selecting and directing people what to do. Everybody was in shock. I was in shock. They were in shock. I was just more prepared to deal with it than they were. We're required to go through a lot of survival training. Every 5 years, we have to go through some recurrent training. I instructed our training, and then I also had just been through it as a student about 6 weeks earlier.
And that's that automatic response when you get into a situation like that. And for you, since you were an instructor, those automatic responses have been ingrained in you for so long. Right. You went right back to that. Right.
And I go through that. Then I start self-assessing. So I'm on the ground. I've got my gun in front of me, and I want to protect the weapon as much as I can. People are coming from everywhere. So I told myself, I said, wiggle your toes, man. Just wiggle your toes. So I felt my toes wiggle in my boots. So at this point, I started setting small goals. That's what I wanted to do. I knew that I had to, if I was going to survive, I knew that it was small, achievable goals is what I had to set then. So I was like, I felt my toes. I was like, all right, roger that. Feel my toes. Okay, we're good here. I was in a tremendous amount of pain. I mean, it was just unbelievable. It was the burning feeling and just the impact of the bullets. And then, the fact that they had just went all the way through my body. It was really painful. At one time I was trying to get up, but this is all I had. So I was down an arm, I was down both legs, I was down my core, and the guys who came up beside me pushed me down and said, "You stop, you need to stop." So I laid there for a while, and I was like, all right. So people started coming. I was like, I got to make my gun safe, because I was worried that somebody would pick it up and think it had a safety or something like that. So I tried to unload the gun, and so I dumped the magazine out. I tried to turn it upside down to scrape the slide to get the bullet to eject, and I couldn't do it. So I loaded the gun just with one hand. I just slam charged the magazine back in, and I kept it here. And then I told people that were coming, and this is part of what we teach in our course. I was telling people, keep the blood in the container, keep the blood in the container, keep the blood in the container, keep the blood in the container. I'm the container, keep the blood in me. So they started. There was a hairdresser that came out, and she was pregnant, and so she came out. Her name's Shelby Barrios, and she's amazing. She came out and she started plugging wounds. They started coming out with paper towels and stuff from Publix, and she started packing the wounds. So at this point, I was like, all right, I got all these people around me. I was like, I got to make it till I can hear the sirens. I've got to, I want to talk to the guys. So then I start hearing sirens. And there's no more beautiful sound than there is of the Clay County Sheriff's Department Dodge Charger coming at you at a high rate of speed, and I'm thinking in my head, I was like, all right, they're coming, man. The cavalry's coming. So, but then I also went in. So I heard them screech into the parking lot, and they started running towards me. And this is something I actually thought about, because we wear a non-standard uniform. It's a brown uniform. Nobody knows who we are. It said, it had the logo for the agency on the back of it. And I just started screaming as he was running, because I knew he had his gun out running towards me. And so Jake Hawkins is his name. Jake was running, and I just started screaming, I'm a cop, I'm a cop, I'm a cop, I'm a cop, because I'm laying there with a gun in my hand, and he doesn't know. So I didn't want him to come and put another one in me because, just as a response, you see a guy with a gun. So he came and he knelt down beside me, and he says, my name's Jacob Hawkins with the Clay County Sheriff's Department. You're going to be okay. And so he started doing an assessment on me, and Jake had just finished a medic refresher course as well, about the same time that I went through my course. And he came down, and he goes, brother, I've got to put a tourniquet on that left leg. And I was like, damn it. So part of our the training we do with Air and Marine is we do tourniquet training. And they make us put a tourniquet on, and they make us do it right. And they make us cinch it all the way down till it cuts the blood flow off, so that way that you have that file that you can go back to. And I had that. So he put it on high and tight, and he put it on as hard as he could, and it hurt like hell. It really did. And then he put another one on my arm. Then he was doing another assessment. He did a finger sweep on me, and he found the hole in my side where I was bleeding out of, and he simply stuck his finger in that one to stop the bleeding until he could get an occlusive dressing, until he get his medic bag out of the back of the car.
So they come out, the threat's gone.
The threat's gone,
at this point. They put you in the back of the ambulance.
Right.
Walk us through what happens then.
So they flipped me over, and as Jake tells the story, he's like, he knew it was bad because he said I looked gray. He said all the color was going out of my body. And I could see in the paramedic's face as well that it was bad, and I could tell. And so they put me on the back, and they put me in the back of the ambulance. So Jake comes over, and he goes, hey, man, they're trying to start an IV on me. And Jake goes, hey, man, he goes, what happened? I have to know what happened. He's like, your boss is on the way. My boss is on the way. Tell me what happened. And I just said, the coward shot me in the back. And he goes, that's it. And he slammed the door on the ambulance. And then my next goal that I'd set was to stay awake until I got to the trauma center, to Orange Park Medical Center. So for the most part, I made it. I passed out from blood loss along the way, but they woke me back up. Where I woke up whenever the ambulance pulled into the ambulance bay. I felt it shimmy, the transition, over the threshold into the parking lot. And so I was at a 45-degree angle. And I remember opening my eyes. I looked down. I was like, "This is, I'm pretty messed up." And I was like, "But we're going to get through it." So I come through. They bring me out of the back of the ambulance. I was at like a 45-degree angle, and I'm kind of a clown anyway. So I'm full of blood. They wheel me into the trauma bay, and I'm like, I guess there's one way to beat the line at the ER, huh? so I saw my direct supervisor, his name's Steve Wood, and then my friend Bill Freehafer. They had beat me to the hospital, and they were standing there, and then Bill gave me a thumbs up, and Woody just started crying. So they put me in the back, and I don't remember anything after that, but one of the trauma nurses told me, her name's Madonna Stotzenberg, she said, you looked at me and said that I'm not going to die. And then she told me, she said, you're right, you're not going to die. And then they wheel me off into surgery after that. They wheel me into surgery. Young doctor named Elias Rockaglu does the surgery. Surgery number one, so bullet number one, which was the most traumatic one, went through my liver. And that's where I was bleeding out through my liver. And the story as it's been told to me is they bring me into surgery. Dr. Shrockaglu is sewing my liver up basically from behind. They get me stabilized. They get me stabilized. Like, all right, we think he's okay. So they wheel me out of the OR, and there's at this time probably maybe 250, 300 people in the waiting room, or the lobby of the hospital. So they wheeled me out, and I crashed right in front of everybody. So I went to cardiac arrest, and so they had to wheel me back into surgery. So they opened me back up again. Then Dr. Shrockaglu goes back to work on my liver, trying to save it. So I ended up going through 19 trauma units of blood. That's what it took to save me. They ran the hospital out of blood, just to save me. So at some point during the surgery, Dr. Shrockaglu comes out and tells my wife Amanda that I'm going to die. He doesn't know if he can save me or not. Then he goes in, and one of the other trauma surgeons calls my time of death, and he says no, and he just keeps going. And anyway, he found it, got the bleeder, and stitched me up, and here I am. So he was able to save my life.
Back from the dead.
Back from the dead. So they told me I went into cardiac arrest twice. So, and then they brought me back, so.
Now, I understand that there was a pretty big outpouring of community support, at least from a blood drive perspective.
Right, yeah, there was, so I believe that they raised somewhere around like 250 units of blood the next day. So we took 19 out, put 250 back in. They told me there was a 3 to 4 hour wait just for people to give blood.
I was listening to a podcast that you did, and you talked about how the Brotherhood all stepped up to and said, whatever he needs, we're gonna, just take our blood.
Yeah.
True. One of the things you said before we went on camera was we were talking about other parts of emergency medical, emergency services, and trauma surgeons that really shine when it comes to the things that they do each and every day.
Right.
The first thing you said was you thought to yourself, I'm going to make it through this.
Right. Yeah, I told myself I wasn't going to die in the parking lot.
Yep.
That's what I said. That I said I'm
You
not
said,
going to die.
I'm not going to die. And then that trauma surgeon said, I'm not going to let him die.
Right.
And I think that definitely speaks to what these trauma surgeons do.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to a law enforcement officer, a public servant in any other degree.
Right.
They'll do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And that mentality that you had from go is something that every law enforcement officer out there has to have on their minds.
So this is what I teach in my survival stuff is and I learned it from somebody else. I didn't come up with this. PMA plus 98.6, positive mental altitude plus 98.6. Because I guarantee you, if I thought I was going to die in that parking lot, I would have died. I would have said, "This is it." I'd have rolled over and died, but I didn't. I told myself I wasn't going to die. And I was going to push. I was, at least as long as it was in my hands, as long as my body was still capable, I was going to keep pushing. It didn't matter how much pain I was in, because that was irrelevant at that point. I had to fight to live. And it was like 1,000 degrees that day in Jacksonville, so I knew I had a body temperature of 98.6. I was laying on the asphalt, and it was hot. I mean, it was really, really hot. And but there was a lot of the people in the parking lot wasn't going to let me die. Jake Hawkins wasn't going to let me die. Stacy Matthewson was my paramedic. And those guys from Fire Station 26 in Clay County, they weren't going to let me die. It wasn't going to be with them anyway. If it was going to happen, it was going to happen in a hospital. But the trauma docs, trauma nurses at Orange Park Medical Center were fantastic. And they were not only good to me, they were good to my family.
Brother, I've interviewed thousands of people, hundreds of wounded officers, and you're the first person that I've ever interviewed that remembers every single person's first and last name. I think that from an outside perspective, Shay talks a little bit about the training, right? The understanding of what's going on and how to respond to it. Mm-hmm. But with the exception of the officer who showed up, at first, the initial people who were helping you out, they were just everyday people. I believe in one of the interviews I heard that there was a retired Marine who was there.
So the guy who actually came up, there was another guy named Tim Dietrich. He was the one who came and really was the first guy there to keep me on the ground and keep me under control. And he knew he knew that he needed to keep me down and keep me still because I was bleeding so bad. And you talk about people, you talk about people like Tim and Shelby that came out. We're talking about people, civilians that ran into a gunfight that weren't armed. You want to talk about a hero. Shelby was pregnant. She was 4 months pregnant and ran into a gunfight. And it was instinctive to her. It was fight or flight, and she was fight. She's a fighter all day long, and so is Tim. And I'm glad, those folks need the recognition. You talk about a hero, those people are the heroes. You can talk about law enforcement, firefighters. We sign up doing this stuff, and none of us think that we are at all. And this is what we do, so what our calling is. But think what all those people did running into that gunfight unarmed was pretty incredible.
What can you tell people who are just average, everyday citizens who may one day, God forbid, find themselves in a situation like this where they have to help? What words of wisdom, words of advice can you give to people?
I would tell you stay calm, especially if it happens to you. You've got to go to that space where I went to. You've got to go to I'm going to survive. And you've got to figure it out. You've got to have that will to live, whether you're in a car accident or a boat accident or whatever may happen. I mean, there's a lot of things that can kill you in this world, not just gunshot wounds. But whatever you find yourself into a traumatic situation, you need to slow yourself down, slow down your breathing, and you need to figure out a way that you're going to live. You can't sit there and say, I'm probably going to die, because you probably will die. You got to have that positive mental attitude, and you got to have the 98.6. You got to have those two things.
What was the recovery like, and what was the support structure like?
Oh, support was unbelievable. The community support. My wife Amanda didn't want my name broadcast all over the news. That's probably why I never made it, because it was never broadcast more than locally, because she wanted me to remain anonymous and come out and tell the story whenever I was ready to tell it and the way I was ready to tell it. So that was a big thing to her, because there was some erroneous reporting in the beginning. It was, they were saying I was off duty and just all kinds of things where they were just making stuff up.
Well, and there was a threat at the hospital too.
So there was a threat at the hospital, yeah. So the kids' friends decided they were going to come to the hospital and try to finish me off. So there was members of Air Marine Operations, my office, and then Sheriff's Department. They were actually in the operating room with me to protect the trauma staff.
That's crazy.
And this is an individual that you had never met before, you had never seen before, never had any interaction with, and not to say that you can speak for why this person took their actions, but it was strictly because of the uniform that you were wearing.
Right. So he just wanted to kill a cop. He had told his girlfriend he was either going to kill another drug dealer or the first cop that he saw. He had made a phone call about 12 minutes earlier and said he was going to kill, and he found me. And, I survived. He's dead. So everything worked out as best it could, I guess. I'm going to be okay. And no other cop got hurt. We didn't lose a sheriff because he might have got a lucky shot in on somebody else. He might have got a headshot. We don't know what would happen. Mm-hmm. But I took it, and I'm glad that nobody else did.
Every time we see a media report where an officer is going to survive, it doesn't matter if they were shot in the hand or if they were shot in the chest. We always hear the media talk about how they're expected to make a complete recovery.
Right.
Will an officer who was shot in the line of duty ever make a complete recovery? Because I don't think that they're taking into consideration sort of the mental trauma that somebody goes through as well.
Right. I think through time, it's all according to what the injuries are. So my injuries, I had 11 abdominal surgeries. So my abdomen will never be the same. So I'll never make I just have a new 100%, that's all. So I'll never be the 100% I was, September 26, 2017 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll never be that guy again. I've got a lot of scar tissue built up in my abdomen because of all the surgeries. I've got 2 bullets in my pelvis that I can feel. I've got another bullet in my spine, which I can't feel, thankfully. And these are hollow point bullets, and they're tugging on scar tissue all the time. So if you want to call it a complete recovery, you just have a new 100%. That's all. And then you also have the post-traumatic stress issues that everybody needs to deal with.
Well, you've since made a recovery to the point where you were able to go back to what you were doing.
That's correct. Yeah. So I got shot on September 26th. They put me in a basically sedated, medically induced coma for a couple weeks, and some interesting things while I was in the coma. So people have asked me, "Did you see the light? Did you see this? Did you see that?" And I thought that was a fair question. So the answer is at some point. Now, I don't know if this is when Dr. Srakaglou threw the stitch that saved me, or if it was 10 seconds before the intubation tube came out. I don't know. But I can tell you in there, I saw my grandmother, and I saw 2 deceased coworkers that came to me and said, "We are not ready for you yet." I'll never forget the images. And the images are as I remember them, how I remember them before they passed away. And they just said, "We're not ready for you yet." And then the intubation tube comes out. I wake up, and I start recovery. So, and I had real bad psychosis, ICU delirium. I was going crazy, and it took me about a week to come out of that. I was driving everybody nuts in the hospital. So,
chills, man.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy experience. So I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to talk again. I had to learn how to eat, which I've mastered apparently. So I went through all that, and that took several weeks. So actually, I was out of the hospital on October 23rd, not even a month after being shot, and they put me directly into rehab, inpatient rehab. And the chief of trauma, his name's Jeff Levine, told me, he said, "If you work hard, I'll let you out of here by Halloween." And I said, "You're on." And I was out on Halloween, October 31st. I went home.
I have to ask the obvious question that I think people watching are probably asking is, why the hell would you go back into law enforcement after being shot because you're a cop?
It's what I do. I mean, I love being a cop. I want to be a cop since I was a little boy.
I love
And,
that answer, by the way.
I
love that answer.
It's just always what I love aviation, and I loved aviation as a kid. The first time my dad took me flying in a Cessna 172, and I love being in airplanes, and I like being a cop, and I enjoy putting those two things together. So, and I was able to work real hard, and the agency was kind enough to let me do it again.
I mean, I can't. Being able to take what happened to you and fight all the way back to the point where you can continue to do the thing that you love.
Yeah.
Being in law enforcement, flying, it's an incredible story.
Yeah, I had several goals. One goal was to go back flying, and I did that. So I went back flying. And then another was to go back through firearms instructor school, because I was supposed to go through my recurrent training in October of 17. So I did that. I did that, and then I finished my college degree while I was in the ICU. So it was just the end of the class. So I had fought for 5 years hard, to go to college and do well and be, I was going to graduate magna cum laude and all that, and then I got shot. My last class was October 1st of 2017, so I got shot on September 26th, but luckily I'd already had most of my work done. So I was going to graduate no matter what. But
you weren't going to let this individual stop you from doing any of those things.
No, I wasn't. So I ended up, we even flew to Washington, D.C. so I could walk. Nobody at the school knew it. I went to American Military University. Nobody knew it, but I wanted to go and walk across the stage and get my degree.
It's one of the toughest SOBs I've ever met in my
You
life.
got that right.
Guys, these are the stories that need to be shared that the mainstream media isn't. We're going to have more on his story in an upcoming episode of Behind the Uniforms. Unfortunately, so far this year, there are so many officers who did not make it. And today we leave you with the images and the names of those fallen officers set to Dave Bray's last call. So thank you all for watching. Thanks for hitting that share button. Brother, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
God bless America.
Man down, I'm bleeding out. There's no time, so please hear me out. These are the last few words that I'd like to say to you all. This is my last call. Tell my wife I love her and that I won't be home tonight. Thank her for those long, hard years that we tried to get it right. And tell her I'll be waiting after she makes it through it all. This is my last call. But ask her to forgive me. Tell her I'm sorry. That I can't be the man that she's gonna be. Tell her I'll be waiting where the winter meets the fall. This is my last call. And tell my children that I love them. Oh yeah, that daddy always loved them so. And tell them to hold their mother tight and to never let her go. And tell them I'll always be watching, looking over them through it all. This is my last call. Tell him to fight for me. Do what's right for me. Choose the light for me. But don't ever forget me. Tell them I'll always be watching, and I'll be there when they fall. This is my last call. beside me, and who held that thin blue line. Stand tall, stand strong, and hold your head up high. I'm sorry I let you down today, but please know I gave my all. This is my last call. So raise a glass for me, and kick some ass for me. Ring a bell for me, send 'em straight to hell for me. I'd like to think I saved a few good lives, but I couldn't save them all. This is my last call. Yeah, I'd like to think I saved a few good lives, but I couldn't save my own. This is my last call.